What we have is Disneyland on steroids. And what's worse is that Disneyland is killing our heroes, our American women and men and young people who are going out to die for civilian orders that are being used and manipulated by a president who's never served our country, has a questionable background in many, many places, forget the birthing issue, and has civilians around him have all been questionable in their capability, and we're all recruited from a questionable predecessor, either Carter or Clinton, who himself was also a sociopath. So we have three sociopaths in line, and I use it not in a diagnostic term, but in a very simple term. You have Clinton, who lied and prevaricated. You have Bush Jr., who lied and prevaricated. And now you have Obama. Now, if we have three in the low, we got a problem here, America. This problem isn't just with the individual, the Republican and Democrat. This problem is with the American people. We have to decide this is enough. Whether you're Republican, Democrat, liberal, or conservative, it's irrelevant.
Sir, let me stop you because absolutely, because we have limited time, and obviously you're going to be back with us a lot.
What happened? The issue now, what happened is, if I didn't know which unit of the Special Forces, and I've worked with Special Forces over 30 years, and part of it, I was involved in development of Delta Force, because in the beginning of hostage negotiating, we didn't have a comparable unit to the SAS. One of the concerns that I had, and I said, if I think any unit's going to be sent in there on the basis of publicity, and believe me, I have a lot of respect for the men and women who serve in the Navy and in all Special Forces, but particularly I work with the military, Army, the Special Forces, which, by the way, you have never heard anything about. You have never heard about any of the Army men who I know and the units that I specifically know, nor will I tell you of the men and women who are in the Army and they're serving this country, and they've never had a movie about them. They've never had a story about them. Yet today, I would have sworn, and I said to Alex Jones beforehand, if I had to predict which unit was going to get the biggest publicity, and if I were Admiral Mullen, who's concerned about his publicity and the publicity of the Navy, because they have no goal whatsoever right now, strategically, I would have said they would have used the SEAL Navy team. Now, think about it. You use a SEAL Navy team on the ground from Afghanistan to Pakistan. It makes no sense. And then to go on the news and to say that we are so great, but we are so secret, it is an inherent contradiction. When you're secret, you are secret. There's a reason why I don't have a picture, because I'm not that good looking. There's a reason why I really don't care about what people think about it, because I want to do my everyday life in America. I don't need to promote my narcissism. I don't need to promote who I am or what I am. It's already difficult to pronounce my last name, Pieczenik, and by the way, that's been my secret to success overseas, because nobody could spell Pieczenik, including Noriega. But let's go back to the Navy SEALs. They really have to question what they did and what happened.
Well, let me stop you, Doctor. Doctor, there's been some major breaking news, Dr. Pieczenik. Are you there? Okay, great. Obviously, this morning they came out and said his daughter, who they have at a military base in Pakistan, who was left there, and he has all these wives, all these concubines, all this made-up cutout, just like they told us that, you know, Pat Tillman was killed fighting Al-Qaeda, and it turned out they just murdered him. Right. Or the same thing with Private Lynch, with Bruckheimer on record producing it. If folks don't know about that, BBC admits it. They're now announcing that, oh, not only did bin Laden not use his wife as a shield, not only did he not shoot at them, now they grabbed him, took him out, and then shot him somewhere else, and they just keep changing it. And then this SEAL Team 6, as you know, is the most secret of the teams. It has other teams associated with it. That's why they use that team, so that other SEALs are ignorant and can never, you know, discover that it didn't happen. And you're breaking down what teams you think are involved, what happened. Obviously, it's theater. He's been dead for 9+ years, 10 years. But, and they're creating this...
Let me tell you a true story. Let me just so your audience understands it. I worked with Special Forces for over 30 years. Not particularly with SEALs, but I did have an episode with the SEALs. I'm not degrading the SEALs. I think there are very good men and women who are in the SEALs. But let me tell you the history of the SEALs as I know it. Under the Reagan administration, I was involved in the invasion of Grenada. The only men we lost on a raft were SEAL member teams heading into Grenada. Now, you tell me how 4 the 6 SEAL members drowned on a raft heading into Grenada. The only members of any special forces I have ever seen in the movies, on television, so promoting themselves like the FBI loves to promote itself, and it had a history where it was totally dysfunctional in international crisis management and in terrorism, because I've worked with the FBI. They never shared their intelligence. They never shared their information. Remember, they were the ones who flew out Osama bin Laden but didn't say a word. Is, again, whenever you see self-promotion of a particular unit in the U.S. government, you have to question it as an American citizen. Now, I'm not degrading those people who go through the SEAL unit and are on the teams. These are brave men and women. I'm questioning how they're being manipulated and used. I'm questioning an Admiral Mullen, who's chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who's already made judgment mistakes by giving a civilian Medal of Honor to another sociopath named Greg Mortensen, who claimed he was in Pakistan, and then I reprimanded them for doing that, and immediately he was seen in terms of a statesmanlike attitude, and I say he should resign now. He should resign. The SEAL team should resign, and every member who has been involved in this contrived, disgusting, degrading PSYOPs operation should resign.
All right, stay there, Doctor. We got a break. We come back as a PSYOPs expert, decipher why it's a fraud for us, and we'll get into some other important issues. Dr. Steve Pieczenik is our guest, and he's breaking down as a PSYOPs expert who really wrote the book on much of the modern system that this is completely phony. And I know that he just laughs at it. He's on record 9 years ago here saying bin Laden was on ice, would be rolled out. Then the former Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, came out and said, indeed, that was true. Teresa Heinz Kerry, Walter Cronkite, big insider. And people get confused. They say, well, this is a new administration. Why would Bush let him do that later? A, no one would believe it because it was exposed beforehand. B, they wanted to keep that boogeyman alive a while. Now that he's not useful anymore, by killing him in the fairyland, in the land of Nod, or the the land that Tinkerbell lives in, by doing that, now they revive him and say, oh my gosh, look, the terrorists are now everywhere. They're going to be attacking us. We've got to set up TSA-trained checkpoints in all malls, grocery stores. That's CBS News today. We've got to take all your rights and have more wars. You've got to do whatever we tell you because bin Laden is dead. And, of course, we wrote about this yesterday. Forget Pakistan. U.S. knew bin Laden's location all along, if you believe the official story. And the Pakistanis are now saying 9 months ago they said something was going on in that compound. But again, that's all just adding credence to the official story and all these debates about, did he have a gun? Did he use his wife? Was he shot at the compound? Did they execute him later? That's all to create inconsistencies in the fake narrative, because somehow it lends credibility to it, because then people say, well, they did kill him, but we're being lied to about exactly how. And the burial at sea, which they say is the Sharia law, and then it's the opposite of Sharia law. Then it makes it about, did they follow Sharia law instead of why did they throw him in the ocean to get rid of him? All of it completely manufactured. So, sir, as a one of the top PSYOP experts out there, on record, doctor, break down not just the fact that you know it's a lie because of your inside sources and being on record, but looking at the official fable. I mean, I think you said it best. The SEALs are the politicized special forces group. Then there's Delta that you helped found, and during the break you said, yes, you're correct, but I can't talk about it. But obviously, through my contacts, there are a whole bunch of other squadrons with other jobs, not just anti-terror, the surveillance groups, the plainclothes groups. I mean, there's all sorts of groups way above that, but you can't get into that. But obviously, they use the politicized group with this phantom SEAL Team 6, so the other SEALs can't even find out it's a fraud. Please continue.
Well, the real issue, again, in the narrative that you want to create in PSYOPs, when you create a war like 9/11, which deception, denial, false flag, and stand down that all your people know about, you need to have a bad guy. So the bad guy was suddenly Osama bin Laden. But in this narrative, because Bush, Cheney, Wolfowitz, and the other neocons were not very bright in understanding even PSYOPs for war, they created two bad guys, Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden. And a lot of us got confused because Osama bin Laden Saddam Hussein has never been a Muslim. He was basically a Ba'athist. He hated Osama bin Laden. And basically we had 2 wars going on with 2 unspecified targets. We went into 2 countries without any clear exposition of what the reasons were. So we had this incredible psyops that made no sense, no internal consistency. When people in the intelligence community came back to Bush and said, this is not true, we don't have weapons of mass destruction, still the only fable that was out there to sustain this myth of the war, of why we were fighting terrorists that didn't exist, and we had created under the Carter administration and subsequently in the Bush's administration, we had to have this phantom called Osama bin Laden, who was somehow scurrying about in the Afghan and in Tora Bora with a renal dialysis machine. And I said 10 years ago on Alex Jones' show, this is nonsense. This psyops is so pathetic because he has Marfan syndrome. He died already 6 months after the 9/11 attack. He has Zawahiri, his number 2 man who's head of the Taliban, is a physician. And by the way, from a tactical point of view and a strategic point of view, his death means absolutely nothing in the real world of intelligence.
Let me stop you.
What it means is that Obama is trying to resurrect his career and trying to get reelected, and it means that Panetta wants to have credibility that he did something in the CIA when, in fact, was a disaster in the CIA. He killed more civilians in Pakistan than any terrorist had. He created more drone attacks than any terrorist. We had more CIA operatives die because of his faulty understanding, and we converted an entire CIA, which is intelligence or human-oriented, into special forces and into a killing unit. Now, this does not involve the generals Petraeus and our military men who've done a formidable job, but they are also at the behest of civilians who've never been to war. So when the President of the United States, Obama, said, without any experience, after picking up the Nobel Peace Prize, which was absurd, and then went to war the next day in Afghanistan after giving this peace talk to the Muslims saying we're all brothers, you could see the inconsistency and the lies, and now this politicized drama, which makes no sense, all the inconsistencies are unwinding. But we needed Osama bin Laden, or the story was needed, in order to get the bad man. The reason he's now discovered, and ostensibly this attack on a mortuary, which I've never, this is the most absurd story I've ever heard, legitimizes, number one, the fact that this entire system of intelligence, which, by the way, Americans have to understand, there are over 850,000 contractors with top secret clearances. Now, that is the most absurd thing I have ever heard.
Who have a stake in the fairy tale. Let me add something, because you are a medical doctor.
Right.
Let's break this down. Now, from my own layman research, total renal failure, kidney failure for laymen out there, the disease he had, I went online to a whole bunch of mainline medical sites last night, and on the outside, they were saying maybe you can live 5-6 years once you're in this position, but if you have this disease, even less. So then I went and pulled up old articles from even the mid-'90s saying he had it then, and then it was on record. You've seen a CIA file. So how can a guy that has something that kills you in 6 years, correct me if I'm wrong, how can he be alive 16 years later?
He can't. That's why I said on your show, even 9 years ago, that Dr. Dooley, one of the physicians of the CIA, went to the American hospital in Dubai. He was already dying under the Clinton administration. So you have Clinton implicated, who's another prevaricator and distorter. And that was used subsequently in 9/11 because they knew his life was limited. That was it. He was to die. So how do you best use a man's imminent death in a psychological warfare routine? Well, you make him the bad guy. So you make him the bad guy, and then you don't find him for 10 years. Now, that is so absurd in terms of credibility.
And by the way, sir, you didn't even know that CBS News had reported that the CIA did go to the American hospital, Le Figaro, the French. That's been confirmed.
No, I knew this way before.
No, I understand. I understand. And, well, no, you said it on the show years ago. It didn't come out until after, but they probably got it from you and then went and did research. But the issue here is that they know full well. Now, his family builds most of the military bases in the Middle East. They did the air conditioning for Mecca. They're one of the richest families in Saudi Arabia.
They're still working.
I mean, exactly. His kids, are all going to Oxford and the rest of it. Now his daughter, but we're not seeing her, pops up and says it's all true. This family, from my study, correct me if I'm wrong, goes back to British intelligence. They didn't just send bin Laden in to be the money man for the Mujahideen that you met while you were there running some of the military operations because he fell off an Apple truck. Now, my intel is they made the deal with him and his family at the time to let him play the part of the bad guy, and since then they've been given even bigger U.S. and British contracts as the payoff.